So, Locke, introduce yourself. Who are you, and what's your walkout song?
Sure. My name is Sondheim. I'm a part of the World Poker Tour and Allied Esports. What I do there is ad sales and distribution, and what we do as a whole organization is spread the love of poker and esports to the world.
Man, what a cool title. I love that. That's really good. Really
In
good.
a nutshell. My walkout song, and I think you touched on this earlier, was Enya. But can you please redo that rendition of it?
Oh, no, 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 no,
Epic.
no, no. I don't know.
Epic.
That was-
So sad.
Nobody said stop.
Yeah, no, I wanted to stop.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, Jared, introduce yourself and tell us your walkout song.
Hi, I'm Jared Smith. I lead the digital products at the WWE, the wrestling company. So walkout songs are very important where I come from. So I'll go with my, I think my top superstar walkout song we have is Glorious, which is Bobby Roode's walkout song. If you haven't heard it, you should. It's pretty epic.
That's awesome. I'm not going to try to sing that one either. And my walkout song is Lowrider by War. Because, I just want to like chill and Lowrider. Yes. And the audience is singing. That's perfect. Well, I wanted to start out with the question talking about this content that's unique and has a fan base that's unique and finding a home for it. So when we look at how this content's distributed, now with technology, devices, et cetera, there's so many different ways to consume it. And I wanted to start out just with each one of you asking the question, where is the home for your content? And I know that's a varied question depending upon, what the content is and who's consuming it. But let's start with you, Jared. Do you feel like your content has a home, or does it have many homes, or where does it live?
Yeah, definitely many homes. So that's and that's intentional. We want to put our content where fans and potential fans are. So we end up looking at it both ways, where we will we'll take a piece of content and then we'll have internal discussions about what is the best channel to distribute that content through. And then we'll also look at particular channels and say what is content we could create for those channels. And so, we have content on traditional broadcast television, on our owned and operated OTT service, on Facebook Watch, YouTube, go down the line, and that's and then the numbers get even greater and the partners get even greater when you start looking internationally.
So how many, just roughly, do you have an idea of how many different channels you have, like different platforms for content? I know that's putting you on the spot, but I'm sure it's a lot, but I'm just curious.
I guess it kind of depends how you count it. Because if you think of like broadcast TV partners, we have dozens around the world, so to get us into every market. As far as like digital channels, there's probably half a dozen or so that we work with. And then our owned and operated OTT service is a big piece of our strategy. And right now, that's where we keep our premium content, our most premium stuff like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and stuff like that.
It's all saved for the home team there. Keep that on your own. So, Locke, tell us about you. Where's your content live? Does it have a home?
Yeah, so same as Jared's. It's basically all over the world. We are in a handful of random places. Czech Republic, we were signing deals with, BT Sport in the UK. We are in Fox Sports Networks over here, now Sinclair. And, not only that, but we are expanding our reach through digital platforms. So we're the one out of 12 channels that was on Pluto TV 5 years ago. And that kind of led the way to all of our AVOD partner platforms, and we've been doing really well on that, mainly because our content, the World Poker Tour, it's very, much like a sit down, let it run, and let it play. You don't have to listen to it. You don't have to really hear anything, and it's all evergreen. So we have 18 seasons that we've done, and it's been doing extremely well on that type of model.
That's awesome. James, share with us. I know you provide some of this yourself, but you also work with other clients. when somebody asks the question, where does your content live? How do you help answer that question?
Right, and I think the content has one home, but then it goes and works at different places on behalf of that home. So there's the contents, the brand's direct-to-consumer, OTT, owned and operated strategy, and then syndicating that content out to places like Pluto, cable, wherever. That's top of the funnel acquisition that you can then drive them to your direct-to-consumer locations.
So one of the reasons we call this, this niche content, this sort of narrow focus has to do with the fan base. And I want to dig into a little bit of how your consumers, how these users are viewing your content, what some of their habits are. Where are they in the world? Where are most of them? I know, again, there's a lot of different places that they're at, but I'm curious to know from the end user perspective, where are you seeing your rabid fan bases and how are they using your content? We can start with you, Jared.
Sure. So, so if we look at our viewership, about roughly speaking, a third happens from within the U.S. and 2/3 is outside the U.S. What's interesting for us is if you look at the revenue split in our business, it's the inverse. So that's why one of the big focuses for us in 2020 and beyond is to try to do more with localizing our product around the world, because we think it'll give us an opportunity to capture more value in some of those markets. As far as kind of what channels people consume through, we still have some of our premier programming happening on broadcast TV. The number of people consuming it on broadcast TV has followed. For a while, it didn't follow. For a while, we were bucking the trend of the decline in broadcast TV. I think it's now we're kind of more in line with the trend, but we're seeing a lot of that viewership now shift to watching our content on YouTube or on our website or apps, where they can come and get highlights, and meaningful chunks of the stuff that they used to watch on traditional TV.
So, and what about devices too? Can you speak a little bit as far as, mobile devices, set-top boxes, traditional, et cetera? Do you have a rough idea of a split there?
I don't know if we. It's not a specific split that we typically talk about, but you can access our content on, depending on how you count it, 15 different devices. And so like our WWE network, we're supporting about a dozen different apps across all the platforms. We see for our big events, people typically want to watch them on larger screen devices. And we actually have a lot of consumption coming through gaming platforms. So using your PS4, your Xbox One to stream media through our app, and as well as Roku, Amazon, Samsung, Android TV, and all the other players there.
So, Locke, where are your end users at, and how are they consuming your content?
I want to say we're doing pretty decent, and we are following what you guys are doing because it sounds exactly what I would say. We're on the same exact platforms as that. I'm sure you guys are a lot more reach, but for now we are looking at around 3 million hours watched a month, which is huge for just a one TV show, one channel branded World Poker Tour. We, after working with Unreal to develop our app, we realized that there's a lot of metrics out there that we were missing. So one key thing that we realized that we saw from the data here was a lot of our viewers come from U.S. bases. So if there's someone's in Libya, they're watching through a Roku, or there's 7 people in Ukraine right now that's watching it through our app. So it's very specific, and it's nice to see exactly where our content plays well. And when I was at MIPCOM just a couple months ago now, there's a lot of different countries that love our content that I would never have guessed. South Africa, for one. And really it's that, 5 users there, yeah, it's small, but there is a need for it. And I think using that data that we get from our owned and operated app really helps us, monetize it in the big picture.
Can you talk a little bit about the esports side as well, and kind of what we're seeing. I know there's explosive growth there, but I think you have a unique perspective in that you've got World Poker Tour, but also esports. And are you seeing that just rapidly rise, or what does that look like from that perspective?
Yeah, so esports is a little tricky. I always like to confront this because it's really a publishing rights issue, right? It's if we are not a publisher like an EA or Epic Games, for example, you don't have the rights to it, and for non-live, anything on Twitch somewhat doesn't matter. But what I was able to do with, we partnered with TVS Tekka on the Allied Esports side. So what I did was I got the rights for Mortal Kombat because one of our partners was Captain Morgan. And, TVS Tekka wants a non-family friendly game, which is never the case, right? You always
Right,
want
yeah.
family friendly for sponsors. But for Captain Morgan, the perfect partner for them was Warner Bros. So I went over to my old friends at Warner Brothers and said, hey, can we use your game for TVS Tekka, one of the largest TV networks in Mexico for Latin America? Are you guys okay with that? They said, heck yeah, we're okay with that. And you have a partner for it too? Awesome. We're all for it. So I went down to Mexico, did this huge live stream. They had all of from TVS Tekka Deportes, they had all of the producers lined up. And it was pretty incredible to watch because talk about streaming. I mean, this was live, but there's 4 different producers, 16 different screens, 32 different cameras. It was the craziest production I've ever seen. And it was incredible to see that go out live. I mean, someone saying, cut to cute. Okay, so the biggest thing about esports was you're not allowed to show fatalities, which is huge in Mortal Kombat. Yeah. But if you show fatalities, YouTube will cut it. They'll cut the stream. Really? Twitch, they're somewhat more lenient about it, but Facebook and YouTube are very, you can't do that. So I ended up being in the background saying, fatality, cut it there, shouting across the room saying, we need to make sure that we don't show it. Wow. And there was no delay in any of this. So if there was something about to pop up, there was Captain Morgan serving a drink, a swipe. And it was incredible. It worked out so well. But that's the esports side. It's all new still. We aren't able to do VOD at this point because of the agreements, but I think it'll get there. And I was talking to someone about this too, I'm surprised there's no one out there syndicating the rights for all this, to be able to work all together, developing all these new cool content and working with the publishers in an easier manner.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch, and you think about all the content creators out there that are creating content with this other publisher-owned content, and what's going to happen with that? It's really interesting. James, I'm curious to know from your perspective too, and I think that's a good question to ask you as well, as the difference between more the traditional sports or niche sports versus esports. Are you seeing anything in working with your clients in a difference between those two?
Yeah, I think the more traditional sports, especially when they're niche, have very passionate, smaller audiences that something like SVOD works a lot better for. We work with a partner called Plaid Horse, which basically covers horse shows. And in an event, they might have 100 contestants, but those 100 contestants each have families who want to pay for that specific content. So they're willing to pay hundreds of dollars for that one event. Versus esports is a bit of a wider audience, and also it tends to skew younger. And in that case, we're seeing huge ad revenues from tapping into that audience.
Well, yeah, I think you brought this up on our conference call earlier about the AVOD versus SVOD. Will there be one that will rule it all, or are we going to continue to see these two just kind of battle it out depending upon the content and the user? I want to throw it down to you. Let's start with you, AVOD versus SVOD. I know, we'll start with you. What do you think?
I think having both is important. We try to even diversify our revenue streams beyond AVOD, SVOD. We'll throw in content licensing, so it's another way to take the content and make some money off of it. And then we're also trying to sell merchandise and sell tickets to live events. With the differences in markets and then the differences in individual users, we think it's very important to have all of those business models available. There are some people that are not that willing to take out their credit card and pay for a subscription for a variety of reasons. And so AVOD gives us the opportunity to monetize that audience. There's others that would rather pay a subscription and not have to see ads. And so so our goal is to maintain that flexibility. We think that's the best strategy. That's the best strategy. Maintain the flexibility and then continue to optimize how we approach each of them.
So, Locke, what do you think, AVOD versus SVOD? Is it a similar situation for you all?
Yeah, we have to do both. So we have, for our AVOD model, it's called Watch WPT, where if you're watching every single 5 minutes, you're going to get an ad. But people were happy with that because you get to see it for free. But for SVOD, we have a app called Club WPT. So it's different because it's a gaming app as well, and we have really old. I call it our catalog, deep catalog, where it's seasons 1 to 8. I should call it throwback, our throwback catalog, and that people don't get a hold of because it's only on that subscription service. So in that case, we have all the deep catalog, and then we have our newer content as well on SVOD.
It brings up a great point because we were talking about this collection, right? That the particular in the niche sports, sometimes you'll have content that goes back years and years and years and years, and that you now have this library of stuff, and you're like, what do we do with it? What's the most creative thing or unique thing that you've seen done with some of your old school library content? What's something that you've seen that you're just like, oh, that's interesting?
Well, for a lot of our partners, they use it for customer acquisition because it becomes a huge library for search. On a lot of the devices, there's universal search where if a user goes in the App Store and types in a certain phrase, they're going to see results that are videos within the app. And when you have hundreds and hundreds of older videos, you rank really high for those, and that's a great way to acquire users without actually putting out any money.
So what's the coolest old piece of content from World Poker Tour? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Is there famous moments or things that you're like? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, well, right now, I've been programming a lot of our old content into these different channels, and so one of the things that we're doing is a Throwback Thursday day.
Hashtag Throwback
So
Thursday. I love it.
Phil Hellmuth getting bad beats, and it's constant bad beats of Phil Hellmuth. So, it's just things like that. We're making it more playful because we are on so many different platforms. And just him having a
Sure,
cow.
Phil loves it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the type of content that we currently have on our social media platforms. So Facebook, YouTube, you name it. But because we are on so many different, Stirs of the world, Samsung TV, and I have the power and the control to program all of this, I want to make it more fun.
Yeah.
And so if people are seeking out our content through these different platforms, why not give them something different? Not the same thing in every single channel.
I love it. So are you linking, when you post that, it almost seems like it's like meme-like content. Are you linking back to where they can see more, or is it just standalone content that's just for fun?
Always a call to action.
Gotcha.
Always. We have a huge social media team, so anything on our Instagram will always be, current. And, we update so much that our fans really love us because we keep them a part of the family, and that's why we call it the WPT family, is because we really do care about what people have to think or what people see and how they feel about our brand.
That's cool. That's neat. All right, so WWE, some amazing content out there. I sent a meme over an animated GIF when I posted on Twitter of Hulk Hogan playing guitar with his championship belt there. What are some of the fun things that you guys are doing with your back catalog content?
Yeah, I think that's for us a really interesting and fun endeavor because and it's something that's different on with WWE content than a lot of your traditional VOD content that's out there. Because, if you want to watch a show in the Netflix library, you're going to go and watch that entire asset. But a lot of the stuff in our library, people don't want to go back and watch the entire WrestleMania 3. They want to go and watch the Hulk Hogan Andre the Giant match. or they don't want to go. They don't want to watch King of the Ring 1997. Like they want to see when Undertaker threw Mankind off of the top of the steel cage. So that's allowed us to it creates some fun challenges for us, and we've gone through our entire back catalog of content, and we've now added roughly 100,000 moments with it, tagged 100,000 moments within that catalog.
Oh, that's a lot.
And there's more we can do there. And so now what that's allowed us to do is really extract so much more value out of that big catalog of content. So we can program those moments. We can weave together collections and make those iconic moments much more discoverable. And we're really excited about continuing to move that forward, so that if you want to go relive a particular storyline that happened, Vince McMahon Stone Cold storyline in a particular year or set of years, we want to give you the tools so you can go and weave from asset to asset through the different shows and see that. We also have fans that, so there's a lot we can do kind of around that, weaving together in an interesting narrative arc those historical assets.
So one final question for each of you, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A. What is a big win moment for you and your company or one of your clients that you've had recently that you're like, this is something that was a really unique opportunity for us to either showcase our strengths or do something unique in the streaming space? Maybe share with us one kind of success story from recent memory of like, yeah, man, this is a cool thing that we did. So who wants to start?
I can start.
All right, go for it, James.
Cool. Yeah, so we have a partnership with the Enthusiast Network. We power one of their streaming services called ASN, Adventure Sports Network. And through that partnership, we delivered the live feed of the Dew Tour this summer. And I think that was a culmination of a lot of efforts to be able to monetize that live feed through ads and also sponsorships. And that took a lot of coordination between our team, their team, and some of the ad networks we work with to figure that out. So that was a big win for us.
Cool, awesome. Hawk, what about you? What's a fun, unique story that you can share of a big win for you guys?
Yeah, so it's actually a two-parter. The saddest moment, and I'll tell you the saddest moment, was I took my son to our office, and I told him what I did, right? And I showed him the artwork on our displayed. It's some cards. He was the most disappointed kid I've ever seen in my whole entire life. I mean, I went from, I used to had sponsorships over at DC Comics and Warner Brothers, so he kind of saw like what it could be, right? The movie magic and all that. And then he saw this, and I was thinking, oh, that's so sad, right? But then my 90-year-old Pop, my husband's grandfather, comes by over the weekend, and he tells me how much he loves the World Poker Tour. And I mean, he was a big TV ad exec back in the day in New York, and he knows the business really well, and that's kind of my side of the business more so is the ad sales side. But in distribution, he said, you're on Fox Sports, but you should be on more. And I told him, Pop, do you know that there's other different ways you can watch this content, right? I pull up the app and I show him, that there's a different world out there, not just TV, traditional TV. And it was funny because I could see the wheels spinning in his head saying, this is amazing. And it's funny because he was always the tech guy from what I hear from my husband and my father-in-law. So just hearing him so kind of engulfed in this new thing, he said, I'm going to go home, I'm going to download that app, I'm going to, watch it every single day. He was so interested in it, and that made me so happy. Because yes, it may not sound as glitzy and glamorous as, a Warner Brothers, DC Comics, but for my Pop to be in the business for that long and to see the growth and the potential and that he loves the product really made me so happy.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great story. I appreciate that. All right, Jaron, what about you?
So I was thinking of a story when I was at a bar, and I was talking to a guy and said that I worked at WWE, and started telling me uh, how he had some wonderful memories of WWE growing up. It was a special connection that he had with his father, who had since passed away, and he was telling me about he had this one memory that was really meaningful to him. He was at an event and he was actually sitting in the front row and had a sign, and Hulk Hogan grabbed his sign and held it up, and and he told me a little bit about when the event happened, and then I was able to step away from the conversation for about 5 minutes, and within our back catalog find that event and show him the event with him in the front row handing his sign to Hulk Hogan. And he was emotional watching it. And just to see the kind of the power of our brand and the connections that it creates, and the treasured memories it creates, it was that was a really cool moment.
Man, that is awesome. That was really neat. Man, that's really cool. On a touching edition of streaming media. Yeah, that was really cool. Thank you very much for sharing those. Well, let's take some questions from you guys. We have some amazing, talented folks up here, and would love to hear your questions. So, yes, right here.
So I mentioned I worked for Grayson, which was run by Nielsen, and you talked about, Jose, was about where your content lives, and you talked about devices. And I was interested to hear kind of some answers there. We've been spending a lot of time on mobile and watching the growth of mobile, and linking that to connected TVs. So as you see, the mobile device continues to, the audience, the growth of that device continues to be amazing. So we're seeing data that can benchmark where your content is against your competitive set or other categories. Like esports is one thing that is, when you look at it on a mobile device, it's a dominant platform. People are spending hours of the day watching esports on these devices.
Yep.
So it kind of rethinks how you think about content that really lives well on mobile, or is that something that's on your radar, or something that really plays well in a mobile space?
All right. So the question is do you feel like your content plays well in the mobile space as compared to some other maybe broader non-niche content?
Yeah, it definitely depends the partner. Since at Unreal we work with people across all verticals, you definitely see younger skewed audiences are much more on mobile. So things like gaming or kids content, we see watch times super high on mobile. Older content, things like we work with the Nosy Network, which has like Jerry Springer series.
The Nosy Network. That's what I love it.
Yeah, it's called Nosy. And Jerry Springer does better on CTV, where older audiences are probably more used to that sit back, relax experience rather than the vertical phone.
What about World Poker Tour?
Yeah, so the World Poker Tour does really well on smart TVs, actually. But for mobile, we are actually in development for the Allied Esports side because we see that there is growth there, and so that's, it's all mobile basically. But for the World Poker Tour, it's a mix. It's really a mix.
What about WWE?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an important platform for us, and I think that what we see is probably similar to what a lot of people see, where some of the shorter form stuff skews towards mobile, and some of our longer form premium stuff, people are watching on larger screens.
Yes, question right here.
Follow up with that same question. Do you find yourselves kind of programming, iterating differently for different platforms? So shorter form content on mobile or anything like that?
Does your content direction choices, are they made based on the platform that it's going to be going on?
Yeah, so that's, I'd say, one of the variants that we use, or one of the factors we use, in addition to your level of fandom, your geographic location, and a host of other things. So yeah, we're programming a lot of variants of experiences for users. And when it comes to platforms, I think that what we typically we'll think of it in three categories, like a website, a mobile app, and a TV app. And stay relatively consistent within those categories.
So for us, we're very specific. So with Facebook, shorter clips, we'll title it, so it'll have closed captioning in big block letters, so that if you're working, you don't want people to hear what you're watching. And then for social media, there's vertical now. We're shooting video in vertical format. And then for Twitch, which we're launching in January with our live tournaments across the world, we're actually going to have a couple of hosts localized for that specific area. And not only that, do different feeds for different areas that we're in, and have commentary where people will be able to interact and engage with a viewer.
So is that like a totally separate Twitch channel for those different areas?
That's a World Poker Tour for the UK or for the US, for
Wow.
Malaysia.
Amazing. Interesting. Some other questions? Yes?
Yeah, when thinking about distribution, going through your own direct-to-consumer owned and operated channel and apps and syndicating out right now, where's the line drawn as far as like revenue that your companies are generating and operational focus between owning your own distribution and syndicating out to these other networks that already have an audience?
So that's tough to rephrase. Yeah, where are you drawing?
Change now and in the next 5 years, I guess.
Yeah. So looking forward, where are you going to be spending money? Is it going to be on your own internal stuff or on partners with other platforms? Yeah.
What gets more focus? What generates more revenue for you today?
What generates more revenue for you today?
So what makes more revenue for us today? Distributing our content. Our largest revenue source right now is still content distribution, through broadcast channels, with number 2 being our subscription business. But when we're making that decision, there's a number of other metrics that we're looking at beyond revenue, and we're not always just trying to optimize revenue. I think that we're looking at how can we expose more people to the WWE brand? How can we drive deeper engagement with the WWE brand over the medium and longer term? So there are times where we will make the choice to put a piece of content in a particular channel that may not give us the most near-term revenue because we think there's other strategic benefits to doing that.
Yeah. So the first step for us was expanding our sandbox, right? To play around with different types of platforms, see what works for our content. And now it's really kind of seeing what actually did work, because appeasing everybody is not sustainable for us. It's a small team. We have 30 people in our company, so there's not a lot of people managing all of this. But for us, what we're seeing now was AVOD works so well for us, for Pluto. We decided to kind of, I want to say saturate ourselves, but it's getting to that point where we might have to downsize the different platforms that we're on, because we're seeing numbers dip. And so once that happens, we're doing testing at the moment, seeing what content works on different platforms, but it's going to take a lot more time to figure out exactly what works on what doesn't. It's still in the infancy stages, right? I mean, Stir just came out 10 months ago, and then, Pluto was 5 years ago, but it really just blew up in the past year. So we're seeing the analytics for it now and just monitoring how well it goes. But for poker content, it's been just working out for us perfectly, because, again, people just let it play. Our average view time is about 4 hours each session. So it kind of shows you that, you can just leave it up and let it run.
4 hour, I love it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So from your customers' perspective, are you seeing them spend, more time, more effort, more money on kind of going after their own, or are they looking at partnerships? What do you think?
I think it definitely depends how niche they are. The smaller, more verticalized they are, exposure is the name of the game, because they need to expand their audience. So being on platforms like a Pluto or Stir is not just a place to make revenue, but as Jared mentioned, there's other metrics that matter there, like exposure and the potential to get that audience to migrate to your owned and operated endpoint, where, of course, there's a way higher lifetime value out of that.
Gotcha. So marketing and advertising through, being on the other platforms. And again, like you said, it's Wild West. There's still stuff launching every day where you're like, well, now I got to get my content over here too. So, a couple more questions. Somebody else. No WWE wrestling questions? No.
I do have a ratings question for you though, because
Ooh,
I've actually.
I like this. Questions back to the audience.
I know.
I'm in.
Mainly because I'm curious to see how these platforms are doing across the board, and there is no real measurement for it yet, besides their own platform. So there's no way of actually fact checking them on their sites. I've reached out to Nielsen and all these different players, and I know that it's very general at the moment. I think it's only for bigger platforms, but how about for the littler guys out there, like a Zumo or a Tubi TV or even Tubi or anything like that? Is there a way to measure or track?
So we have a question going back to somebody in the audience from Nielsen about measuring the small
I'm
small
surprised
players.
because it's growing so rapidly.
So I work on the mobile side, so I can see we have a panel of 130,000 Android phone users that have given us the rights to look at what they do on a day-to-day basis, passive user measurement. So I can tell you how many panelists have Zumo, and you take a representative sample. So you can make some, I would say, it's not currency grade, but it gives you some pretty good tools and insights about how fast it's growing. The engagement is really interesting. You can see how many people engaging with Pluto's growing pretty fast. I've seen that. And Tubi. We actually could see increases when Tubi did that big marketing campaign. We saw the panelists and we saw people increase engagement. Then we could see what it took from. Where was that audience coming from? So yes, there's general insights, but not from, I would say, if you're looking for hard, like Nielsen currency grade metrics for the smaller players, it's still not quite there.
Because on the,
Gotcha.
can I, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Because
No,
on the
no.
ad sell side and sponsorship side, I could see that being an issue. Well, where are people coming from? It's all programmatic buying now, but if we do direct sales, how can we target these sponsors specifically for each platform?
Yeah,
Some of those,
yeah.
we capture the ad IDs in those panels.
Yeah.
And match back, which we're just now starting to think about how to, really take that to the marketplace. So that's another, from an ad sales perspective, instead of programmatic, we can actually see, plus we see geolocation. So if someone's going to an event, a WWE event, and they're engaging, and then they look on their app and they look up a URL of a sponsor, it's an ROI measurement tool as well. So we just launched this thing a few months ago. We're starting to get some feedback from a lot of the platforms. So I'll give you guys some feedback on it.
That's good stuff. That's interesting to know. One final question for all of you, and then we'll wrap up this session. Again, thank you everybody for coming out. Final thoughts on the future of this niche content as we talk about. Again, tomorrow there's going to be another thing that's going to launch that we're going to have to figure out how to get our content on. Where do you see, folks who have this very unique content, this rabid fan base? Where are they going to be going to next?
I think the future is finding a way to tie in your own and operate streaming service into your fandom, creating experiences, whether at live events or message boards or just experiences within your apps that foster that community.
I'm looking forward to more of that stuff. I like that.
Yeah, I'm all about the choose your own adventure type of platform. So knowing that this is poker, I think that as you know, a lot of people do multi-screen. What I want to eventually do is really engage with our fan base and play with them while they're watching live.
That's really cool. How far away is that, do you think?
It's tomorrow. No.
I would love to say, that's really cool, right? That's the dream, right? Is that, you see some kids that are, playing Minecraft along while they're watching somebody play it, or, it's the same thing where I want to be a part of what's going on.
Well, it's the whole VR movement. So that's something that we've been getting into soon.
Cool.
And it's very exciting stuff. And, hopefully it's you're immersing yourself into this content.
I love it. That's great. All right. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I think that our attitude is less about trying to predict the future and more about trying to spread our bets out and just developing compelling content, trying to have connections with our fans, and then And then it kind of gives us that flexibility to continue to optimize and distribute that content in different ways.
No hints about anything that you're going to do. We just got a really juicy hint about some cool stuff coming up. Nothing you can share with us about maybe something we're going to see cool coming down the pike?
Let's see.
Now that I put him on the spot,
I mean, the big initiatives for us right now are we're getting more content, more of our free content into all of our owned and operated experiences. We've talked about launching a VIP service or tier that will go. That'll be at a higher price point than our OTT subscription. You'll get some additional fan perks for that. And then localization is a really big thing for us. We're in every country right now, but our product the localization we've done so far has been very limited. So the product experience, the commerce experience is very similar regardless of where you are in the world, and so we think that's a huge opportunity to do that. So those are the big things that we're focused on.
Here's what I would love to see is during one of those events is when they cut to the crowd shot. We're watching it in, Brazil. All of the signs in the crowd are in Portuguese. That would be, I would love to see that happen. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you guys for coming out and being a part of this. And please come up if you got any additional questions, anything you want to ask these folks. Thank you so much for coming out. Everybody, a big round of applause for our panelists. And thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jose.
Yeah, thanks for having us.